Welcome back to the Duarte Show. I am TJ Duarte. I'm your host, and welcome back to the Youth Counter Revolution. Tonight, we're asking a serious question: what affects every town, every neighborhood, and family in our state? Does Connecticut need more representation? Because a lot of people, especially in cities like Waterbury, Hartford, Bridgeport, and New Haven, the answer feels obvious. People feel ignored, neglected, and they feel like decisions are being made about them instead with them. Whether you're black, Hispanic, Puerto Rican, working class, young, conservative, liberal, independent, many people across Connecticut are asking the same thing. Who are we actually asking? Who's actually asking and speaking for us? The representation in Connecticut is simple. The CT Democrats have control of the House and the Senate. They are the ones making the policies for the communities in our state. Now, let's be clear. Connecticut is diverse. We have urban, suburban, and immigrant families and long term residents, small business owners, students, union workers, and people who struggle just to pay rent. But critics say, the political system feels dominated by the same voices, the same insiders, and the same out of touch politicians. Some say young people are unrepresented, unprecedented. Others say Hispanics and Black communities deserve stronger political influence. And some conservatives feel their perspectives are dismissed entirely in state politics. No matter where you stand politically, representation matters because government decisions impact real lives. For example, like housing, school, transportation, policing, taxes, and jobs. There's a bigger issue in Connecticut. When people stop feeling represented, they stop participating. Voter turnout drops, trust disappears, and criticism of our own government rises. And that's dangerous for any democracy. People believe Connecticut politics has been too disconnected from the regular residents. Others argue the state is already moving forward in with our diverse community. A lot of teenagers and young adults in Connecticut feel like politics are only talking at them, not to them. Yet there's a generation inheriting rising costs, housing struggles, and uncertain economy. So the question becomes: should Connecticut open the door to newer voices and perspectives? That's what I heard today in the Ten Commandment debate hosted by WTIC News Talk 1080. Let's speak about this debate. With the Ten Commandments debate, we had Ryan Fazio and Betsy McCoy. One candidate was missing out, and that would be Aaron Stewart. We'll have a later episode on her later. This debate is about identifying the issues of our state. Both candidates on stage presented their policies, their views, and what they plan to do when they get elected governor. Our governor in Connecticut currently has ran our state completely into the ground. Nothing works anymore. Transportation doesn't work, our educational system doesn't work, and youth empowerment doesn't work anymore in our state? Here's a couple clips from Ryan Fazio and Betsy McCoy. Because when you talk about Connecticut, the one thing that should come to mind is our state. Here's a clip for them talking. As I said, Connecticut can be so much more than just a state called a trust fund or this or that. We have great people in Connecticut. We have great, hardworking families. It's just the time that we encourage people to start voting in a way of, oh, national Democrats or national Republicans are doing poorly. But look at the bigger picture. You want things to change in your state, you need to have an open mind about every single policy, not just what one person agrees with. And it's interesting to me that we have voters in Connecticut who are basically denying the fact to listen to other viewpoints in our state. For example, I heard someone talk about how Republicans are always causing issues with anyone, when it was the Democrats in Connecticut pointing the finger every single time to Republicans and attacking one of the candidates, Ryan Fazio, today on his record on voting, which he said he was very proud of. It is absolutely wild. And for a disclaimer, this episode is recorded after the debate. If you look around Connecticut, your communities are in shambles, your taxes are way too high, and you barely can get by in life. Not only that, with Connecticut, we are the well, I believe the third highest electric rates in the state in the country, and what, fourth highest property taxes in the entire country. We are basically California, but the shrink down version. And you know where are all the companies and businesses going? They're going to Florida, Texas, and in the South. It's all about having a diverse government. That's what we don't have. We have politicians going on stage saying they're going to save the middle class. They're going to help the middle class. They're going to help urban communities. They're going to help black people, being the black messiah. Governor Lamont likes to lecture people saying don't vote red because you'll get Donald Trump 2.0. This election is not about Donald Trump. I'm sorry. You can't make it about Donald Trump. This election is not about him. It's not. It simply is not. It's simply not. It is about Connecticut voters. It's about the voters here in Connecticut. It's about the residents here in Connecticut. It's about the kids here in Connecticut. It's about the teachers, union workers, hospital nurses, doctors, truck drivers who live in Connecticut. It's about Connecticut, not Trump, not Kamala, not Biden, not no one else but Connecticut. It's not about ICE. It's not about China. It's not about anything you can imagine that's not about Connecticut. We are the constitutional state. Connecticut needs to, one, finally wake up and realize the issues we are facing in our state. Now, you could say, okay, just because this election is not about Trump or ICE or this or that, doesn't mean it's not important. Yes, it does. It is important to talk about national issues. But when you're trying to win the governor's race, you cannot point your finger at the national Democrats or national Republicans. It is your fault that your state is the way it is. It's your fault. No matter if you're a Democrat or Republican, it is your fault for the way the state is going. If you're governor, and it will be your fault for having the third highest electric rates in the country, fourth highest property taxes. U-Haul vans are ranking us number one for business. Because you know why? No one wants to live here because no one wants to pay the car taxes. No one wants to pay any silly tax that we have. They don't want to keep. They want to keep imposing taxes, but not change fix our roads and bridges. Here in Waterbury, you want to know what's happening in Waterbury? We had a water superintendent. He resigned, then got arrested. I believe a couple hours after his resignation because he wasn't fit for the job, because he wasn't qualified for the job. So they're letting anyone into City Hall, anyone in. And you know what? It is. I am honestly tired of these politicians who just sit there and think, oh yeah, my party's in charge. We're not going to do anything. Voters are upset at the way our state is going. They are done with the way our state is going. And it seems like anyone on the CT Democrats don't care. They don't care about the issues you're facing at home. They do not. And they'll never will. I'm sorry. As a young person, I like to give both sides a chance. And the one side that has been with open arms are the CT Republicans, not the CT Democrats. You know why? Because they want to raise your taxes, have the worst housing crisis in the state, in the country, then blame it on another party, and then leave power and leave you to clean up their mess. This is not the state we have to live in. We don't have to live like this. We can vote. You can vote. Get Ned Lamont out of office. Our governor is making our state look bad. He claims we're the pizza capital today, basketball capital, hockey capital. Everything that you can imagine, he has named us. Our governor is not a real governor. And it's time for change in our state. Now, I want to leave you to think about and listen to a few clips from the debate from tonight on Thursday. Want you to think about the policies they're talking about. And from there, I will close off this episode of the podcast. And I will let you think and marinate in the policies and let you think about the campaign.
Really very possible, if you look at a map of the United States, 8 states have no income tax, 18 are gradually going to zero, and several have adopted legislation making zero their explicit goal, including, as you pointed out, Oklahoma, and just 2 weeks ago, South Carolina. How does this legislation work? It says first you announce that you're going to zero, and business activity picks up because companies plan long-term and see a state going to zero as an attractive place to do business. Business picks up, and the legislation says when revenue increases 5% above the baseline, that new revenue must be used to slice down the tax. It cannot be used the way Lefty Lamont always uses new revenue to create more government programs and make government bigger and more costly at your expense. Instead, every increase in revenue must be used to gradually axe the tax. Now, when Bob Stefanowski proposed eliminating the income tax in his previous runs, the map of the United States looked very, very different. But now, with so many states, 18 and 8, competing by zeroing out their income tax, the companies in Connecticut are heading to all those states. Those states are cleaning Lefty Lamont's clock. And if we want economic growth in our nation, in our state, if we want our children to be able to build careers here when they graduate from high school or college instead of leaving, we must eliminate the income tax. Otherwise, we are dooming them to live in a low-growth state. Connecticut can be Florida without the palm trees, the tax haven of the Northeast, and I am running to be your Ron DeSantis.
Short answer, how many years do you think it would take for Connecticut to eliminate the income tax?
It depends on national growth, but generally 5 to 7.
In order to pass that budget, Republicans were able to enact budgetary guardrails which limited the amount of spending, limited the amount of debt in a state with the biggest debt and unfunded liability overhang of almost any in the country. It was the most important economic policy innovation in this state in a generation. This governor, Governor Lamont, inherited those budget guardrails and at the end of 8 years has shredded them. He has shredded the last modicum of fiscal responsibility, defending taxpayers in this state, and this is going to be a priority campaign issue on which we must win this election. He was elected on a false pretense to be fiscally responsible as a Democrat and to defend taxpayers. But he has eviscerated the very fiscal budgetary guardrails that he inherited in his first term by the end of his second, resulting in billions of dollars in more debt, higher taxes, and much higher taxes into the future. As governor, I'll renew and strengthen the fiscal guardrails. We need, exactly as Betsy said, we need an overall spending cap. It needs to be stronger because what you tax is ultimately what you spend, and Connecticut doesn't have a revenue problem, it has a spending problem.
We are paying down those pension liabilities at the expense of families all across the state, and I oppose it. Because true, Connecticut has higher indebtedness than almost any other state. But Connecticut residents also rank first in their indebtedness for mortgages, car payments, and other loans. And we ought to be paying attention to that. But most people in this room and in this state do not lie awake at night worrying about the state debt. But they sure lie awake at night worrying about their own debt. And when we're taking their hard-earned money to pay down that state debt, when they can't afford their own debts, that is wrong.
Since we have the time to actually follow up, do you think we wouldn't pay down those liabilities at all? Excess money to shareholders.
I would definitely slow down what's been done because we're really extorting, I could say raping, the public at the expense of these unions, and it's wrong.
Effective budgeting tool for using one-time temporary revenues to pay down those long-term debts. The problem with those long-term debts, especially the pension liabilities, is they get bigger and bigger at 8% every year. So if you're not meeting them every single year, then they're going to double in just a few years' time because they're growing at 8%. We can deliver real middle-class tax relief while also paying down our liabilities. I've also fought hard and been willing to stand up as just one or two or three senators sometimes with my friend Senator Sampson, whom I see in the audience, the great conservative. That we need to pay our state employees well, and it needs to be fair and sustainable for everybody and for taxpayers. If we do not have a sustainable plan to fairly compensate state employees that is fair to taxpayers, then everyone is going to get hurt in the long run. We've seen this movie before, where we kick the can down the road. The problem with this governor is that he has acknowledged these facts, but
my audience is core GOP voters, and they want to know that they're not being to fight for conservative principles in a hostile blue state environment. What specific commitments will you make to the base on the issues like parental rights, constitutional protections, and limited government to ensure high turnout and enthusiasm?
Well, let's start with those, because the last session of the legislature was an all-out assault on our Bill of Rights and our United States Constitution. They took that document and rammed it into the floor. It was so terrible. So if you're worried about government forcing you to vaccinate your children, or about government taking away your firearms, or about government preventing you from homeschooling your children, I have your back. I have studied and then defended the United States Constitution my entire life. I earned a PhD in constitutional history from Columbia, taught it for many years, wrote 2 books on the history of the Constitution, and since I have served in government, starting with taking down Hillary Clinton's unconstitutional health law, I have fought for your rights against big Democratic government, and that's what I will continue to do. I will litigate against those
every
laws.
single term, when I hold my hand up and swear to God to uphold the Constitution of the United States and the state of Connecticut, we cannot, as Republicans, nominate candidates who we cannot trust to uphold the basic tenets of our party. And yes, we can win over the big middle in our state while doing that. I've done it as a state senator. I've been willing to stand up and say no to the overreaches and abuses at every turn of this governor and this supermajority in the state legislature. I spent hours and hours. I was there till 4 a.m. with the homeschool and private school families, saying no to the elimination of their parental rights. I was the very first or second one to testify against the medical mandate bill, taking away people's medical freedoms in this state. At every turn in the state legislature, I've stood up.